Hey, don't I know you?
You do, actually. It was just in your class a few hours ago.
Really? You're one of my students now? We are in a
Ah,
really weird world if Rob is actually teaching Wade Long. It's usually the other way around, right, my friend?
it's a very small world these days.
Indeed. And nowadays, I don't think we should be really hiding much information, don't you think, my friend?
Well, information wants to be free.
True.
That's
Not
it, and that's all. Everything eventually wants to be free and will be free.
true, not just that too, but at the same time, what you share comes back to you 100-fold, right, my friend?
That's what they say.
All right, so today's episode, we're going to be talking about something interesting, something that we haven't done in quite a while. But what we're going to be doing is we are going to deep dive the topic that brought the two of us together. I remember the year was I think it was 96. A young whippersnapper calls up Ancient Ways Bookshop asking about the Necronomicon. And some crackhead, I told her that the young whippersnapper said to the person on the phone that he was afraid of Satan and didn't want to do anything satanic. Then this crackhead said on the phone, to me, Satan is the father of all magic. I'm not trying to piss off Shea Belay, but I was young. I was very Christian. The Satan is the father of all magic. And I hear somebody yell in the background, said, give me the goddamn phone. What the hell did you tell him that crap for? And lo and behold, this began the story of Rob and Wade. And a couple days later, I went down there from Sunnyvale all the way to Oakland to get my copy of the Lamegatan, which I brought with me into exile in the Philippines and started a very interesting story that led us to where we are today. So now we're going to be talking all about the Goetia, which is the first of 5 books of the Lamegatan. So before we go any further, you want to share with us what exactly is the Lamegatan?
Well, here's the interesting part of that is that for the longest time, the Goetia, which is Greek for witchcraft,
Really?
was that was the one that was printed, that was published, that everybody had, that it was all out there, and that's all everybody saw. That they thought that was what the Lesser Key of Solomon was, even though he does say in the book that there are 4 other books to it.
Mm-hmm.
So I kind of went on my own sort of quest to find out, well, like, what's going on with this. Was before the information age. This was way back in, oh my God, back in the late 1900s.
Yep.
That I went on a quest to find the other ones, and I had to go to the British Library. I didn't go there, but I ordered microfilm from the British Library. I had to get the prints done. I had to get them scanned in, and I'd seen that there had been a couple attempts on this side of the pond to make all 5 books available, but they were so poorly done, and the English to English translation was god awful. I mean, the handwriting wasn't great, but the printing was so small. The way that they had made the copies, it was so small, and they hadn't translated them, or they hadn't transcribed them very well, and the small, designs weren't very good. So I thought, well, I needed to actually go and get the originals, and I had them, translated, blown up big, so you could actually see the designs. Had to clean them up because they'd been photocopied multiple times. Go through and painstakingly read all of the stuff. So turned out, in my quest to go and find all 5 books, I ended up having to publish all 5 books. And since I was also doing commentary on each of the books, I discovered something that Crowley himself had not discovered. In that, in the book, in the 5th one, the Artem Novum, Crowley says that it's a list of the meanings of the names in the triangle, or around the circle, and he goes through and he's listing them. and he says like, oh well, these are the names. And it's all gibberish because the names don't mean anything of the sort. Let's see if I can find the page. You know what? But I realized that the names that they're written down in the order that they go around the circle or around the triangle, but some of the names would begin with the word "and," like the description of the name begins with the word "and." And I was like, wait a minute, this is ridiculous. This can't be right.
Yeah.
So if you read them top to bottom, you realize that this is a prayer that you're supposed to recite while you're writing the names around the triangle. And I think whoever transcribed Sloan 3621 made that mistake at some point. He just, oh, this must be what they mean. And Crowley just kind of went with it. So the fifth book is all about how to do your safety equipment, how to properly consecrate the circle and the triangle and your lament and all of this. It's all your prep work.
Yeah, you kind of jump to the fifth book, and the Goetia. Everybody and their mothers knows the Goetia, right?
Yes.
It's even been in comics, but people haven't talked about the other four books. Can we go through them one by one?
Well, I jumped to the fifth book because that's the one that you use to do the equipment for all the other books. So the first one, yeah. So the first one, I mean, really, the fifth book should be the first one. But the first one that's given in the Sloan manuscript was the Goetia. That was the Book of Evil Spirits.
Yeah.
And that is the Book of Evil Spirits. Even though they're listed, some of them say, oh, these spirits are of good nature. These ones are of mixed good and evil nature. So the second one is the Thurgia Goetia, which is the Book of Good and Evil Spirits. But it's more of the same, except that these ones are given as like the jinn, or they're wind demons that they live in specific directions in the sky.
Yeah.
So if you have something that you need to have done north by northwest of you, you have a chart that you can look up the guy and have him go do it. They also have the wandering princes, which can be from any direction, but the whole book seems to be about the use of these wind demons.
Okay. So what about the third one?
Third one is the Pauline art, which it's given as, here's some of the ones from the Thurgia Goetia. It's got you've got your chief spirit and then all of his captains. But the third one is largely about, and this was one that I couldn't really kind of get my head around. I presented it as it was given to me from the books, but it's about the use of different angels of the zodiac. And there's a complex method in there that doesn't work, that actually shows how to create a talisman based on the astrological phenomenon that's in the sky at the time, but there is insufficient information given to really go through and do it.
Wow, so there's actually an astrological version of the Goetia. That's fascinating.
Oh, yeah, it's got there's tables you can use to figure out which one. And the way that it's given is for each of the hours of the day and night, there's a particular spirit given, and then you would add around that the different astrological aspects going on at the time. And it's not really well explained which ones are for what, but it seems to be well, you see you've got your tables, and you've got all of your names on it for the different spirits. But I found this book to be much less useful than the other ones because it was the method as described was incomplete. So I didn't really get a chance to experiment with that at all.
So it's something that really can't be used. Is that what you're saying?
Well, it needs development. And I didn't get very deep into astrological magic. Honestly, I got whatever I needed from the first two books.
All right. And the last one before, isn't that the Almadel or the art? What was that again?
Yeah, the
Okay.
Art Almadel. And it's just sort of a, it's like an additional grimoire. I guess it's less about summoning, but more about a almost like your holy guardian angel work. It's if the fifth book is how you prep your temple, the Almadel is how you prep yourself.
Isn't that the one you got to like make like a wax table or something like that?
You make there's actually the wax tablet is that guy right there. So that's another one that probably should also be first. If the fifth book, it would be second then. And then you have your 3 books of actual working. But like I said, the third book, the Pauline art, which I guess is named after the disciple Paul, that can be the whole thing can be as complex as you want. Or if you go with international imports, you can say, "Hey, you know what? I'm just going to make them into talismans and write my wish on the back, and carry them around with me,
and see if they do anything." Right?
Right. So yeah, there's a wide range of practice in the use of the Goetia.
So getting to it, today's episode, we're going to be discussing in depth the beginning and the preparation and what needs to be done to actually do a Goetic ceremony. Now, for those tuning in, we are not actually going to do it on camera. That takes a bit of preparation if you're going to do it traditional methods. But let's start off with the beginning. Let's say we want to do a Goetic summoning. What's the first thing we need to do?
Well, the first time I did one was, oh my goodness, that was back in the late 80s. I had a friend that lived up in Erie, and I moved there after I left college. And we were in we're in my apartment, and we decided we were going to go ahead and summon. We figured we'd summon the smallest one, which at the time seemed to be like, well, we'd have the most control over him. But honestly, we had nothing. We were completely unprepared for this. So in order to, casting the circle, I took like a little bag of salt and I was sprinkling it in a circle while I was doing this particular chant to cast a circle of protection around us. And we had on these old mildewed graduation gowns that he had found in storage. And so we were doing the thing because we didn't have black robes. So we're going through and doing the conjuration as it's listed in the book. And this is something that I do not recommend for anybody. If you see something with names of power in it, find out what they are. Because you're invoking something to give you authority over demons, and they will know if you have no idea what you're talking about. So we went ahead and conjured it, and I was just like, okay. And I'm sitting there like, I feel like an asshole now. Like, we're down here reading out of this book. We got these smelly robes on. It's like, this is insane. This is really dumb. And about that time, since the only light in the room was from the candles, I at that point, I saw there was a shadow just kind of floats across the wall on the other side of the candles, and there was nothing there. And I watched that just sort of going around the room. And I was thinking like, oh man, I'd rather feel like an asshole right now. Because this is, it was actually kind of spooky. Wow. Because now I was like, well, I'm in this completely inadequate circle. And I didn't know what I had expected to have happen. I certainly didn't expect something to show up. Yeah.
So what happened next?
And at the time, what's that?
What happened next? Did it jump you?
Well, no, here's the thing. Neither one of us knew how to scry.
Okay.
So we could see the physical phenomenon of it being there. Nobody knew how to talk to it. So we had prepared for this in case it wasn't something that could actually speak to us. We trapped it in a small crystal.
Okay.
Which we actually did it wrong. We bound it to the crystal, but we didn't trap it inside. So really, we had just given it a physical body and was still allowed to do anything it wanted, which we didn't discover for a few days. So, well, we attached it to the crystal, and then we, closed up the circle and patted ourselves on the back for a successful summoning. And then we noticed over the next couple of days that things were happening. Pets were freaking out. People were seeing and hearing things in the house, in other places in the house. And we realized, like, wait a minute, this is drawing power because it's a quartz crystal. We used a small, but it was like absolutely perfect double terminated quartz crystal. It was like, okay, so this thing is somehow drawing power from it. I got a great idea. Let's hide it in the woods.
So what happened?
Well, we hid it in the woods, and we had after that it was like anybody and other people that didn't even know that we were doing this were talking about it later. They're like, "Man, I think the woods are haunted." They
you haunted the woods.
Was like we can't walk through there at night anymore. Like it used to be, you feel completely safe. Now it's like it's haunted, or there's like it sounds like there's somebody walking around in there following you. And that was how we ruined a perfectly good forest.
So with that being said, what is one of the first things that you recommend we do if we're going to start or prepare for a goetic evocation of any form?
Well, in a perfect world, you would need to you would want to have knowledge and conversation first, because that kind of gives you the spiritual authority that you can do this without using names of power. You can go in there and use your own name. And ultimately, that would be best. If it's not, then you'd want to rewrite the conjuration in such a way that you call them in the names of, or in names of power that you actually know and believe in.
Okay. So is there like a certain hierarchy that you recommend that like we should work from like the lesser ranking ones to the top ones? Or are you the kind of the belief that like just work with what you think you're going to want to work with?
You can call the one that you think you're going to work with first. Or if you just wanted to get started with it, you can call the kings and get them to swear to a pact. And then once you have a pact with the kings, you can call the ones that you need and then just find out which king he answers to if he wants to give you any shit about it.
But don't you need to have like a certain level of like prestige first because remember, we're talking from the beginning here. Like you've never done a summoning before. You've never done any kind of an evocation of a goetic. So like, just, I don't, correct me if I'm wrong. Don't you think it would be better to start with the lightweights and go to the heavyweights? Because it's like, I think if you've never done a goetic, it would be smarter to do forecasters at the bottom of the pecking order than jump straight to Belial and God knows what.
Honestly, I didn't have any of that. We started with the smallest one, thinking he'd be the easiest to control, and he wasn't. So it wasn't about levels of control that we thought we had, or that we actually had. For the most part, it seemed like they wanted to come and work with us. My subsequent work with them after that, it wasn't even that if they had resented us for calling them, pretty sure we'd have known it. They would have. They would have made it known.
This is what brings me to my next question, though, which is like, if you're gonna try to summon something outside of your pay grade, is it a scenario where the worst that can happen is nothing at all, or is it the worst that can happen that it shows up pissed off?
Well, here's the thing: is that what I've come to learn from them is that none of these guys are above our pay grade.
Okay.
Some of them are kind of they're not really, not so much that they're. I mean, some of them are definitely, out of your weight class, because we're talking about very powerful beings, but humans are given authority over them because we have both we're both spiritual beings, and we have physical bodies.
Mm-hmm.
So we have massive advantage over them in that sense, that we have kind of the, both worlds going in our favor, whereas they only have one.
So you're saying that we have the natural potential to just get them to work with us, right?
Well, even if you look at it from a statutory point of view, we're given authority over every angel and demon and spirit and all of these things, and that's actually part of the headless invocation. Mm-hmm. Is, come thou forth and follow me, that every spirit of the firmament and of the earth and under the earth, and formless fire and rushing air, that these all spirits come together and be obedient unto me. That is the conjuration.
All right, given. But so you said something about weight class though, and I wanted to look into that. Where how do we know that a spirit, just for the lulls, but how do we know that a spirit is in our weight class or not? Because I think it's important that we determine that.
Well, we had I was the scryer at one point during a ritual where we had a new student was summoning a spirit for the first time, and we had a couple of master magicians that were there, kind of walk him through and hold his hand. Mm-hmm. And he was going through, and he actually threw out our names as authority, that I'm the scion of Frater blah 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 and Frater blah blah blah, whom you know. And it's sort of like all right, I can see this. And he commands the spirit into the triangle. And now the vision that I was given was the spirit actually picked up the triangle on one finger as sort of twirling it on his finger. Mm-hmm. And I'm like, yeah, see, this is the thing about weight class right here. Is like, this guy is playing along, mm-hmm. because he knows he has to, but the tools as given really only have the authority if they're properly composed, if they mean something to you. And I mean that otherwise they're just fluff. It's a placebo. Mm-hmm. So it wasn't even a matter of having the authority to call them.
Yeah.
A lot of it is going to be having the authority to command them. So it's like if you call them, they're going to look at that and be like, oh, okay, this is something different, and show up. But then if you're like, oh, I want you to do this, they're like, this is starting to sound like work. Go fuck yourself.
It's funny because, my own mentor, God rest her soul, Master Angel, used to tell me that, like, if you do want to do any form of evocatory work, it's prudent to start from the bottom. Because, like, example, if you're the guy who's mastered all the bottom spirits, you've worked with like the lowest spirits there are, the simplest of spirits, then it's natural that the spirits of a higher level close to them will kind of already say, hey, there's this guy on the bottom, he's handling everyone. In other words, it's gonna increase what we call as your spiritual prestige. And with that being said, this is just conjecture on my end. I mean, you could agree or disagree. I personally would tell somebody, like, if you do want to get to something like Goetics, instead of just jumping straight to Goetics, why don't you start working with elemental spirits first, all right? And then from there, what you can do is once you've worked with them, because they're easy to work with. Like there's some good books out there, like by Constantinos, The Summoning Spirits. It's a great entry to this. Once you've already gotten proficiency, you've got your method down, you've got your scrying down, you got the things down that you need to do, then maybe you can go one level upwards to like something like the Olympic spirits, not as dangerous, okay? And do the same thing there. Because like my own master told me that if you try jumping straight to the top of the line, the best you can hope for is to be ignored. Because like think of it like the mafia. If I'm just a nobody and I want to see the Don, I'll be lucky to even see him. But if I get the Don's attention, usually as a grunt, the Don ain't gonna pay attention. He's not gonna look at me in respect. He's gonna look at me pissed off. So like my own approach has always been, if you want to do with something like Enochian, for example, I would say then get a good grasp on the Goetic spirits. Because if you're doing that well enough, the Enochian spirit's like, there's this fucker out there and he summoned a shitload of demons. He obviously knows what he's doing. Versus if I just go to the front of the line and nobody pays attention. But that's just the way I do it. What do you think about that approach?
Well, I would handle it the same way that you would handle, say, speaking with the mafia.
Uh-huh.
In that, if I'm going to be working with a guy, I would want to talk to his boss. Or say that it's like, okay, you know, there's a bunch. You would arrange a meet. And you'd say, okay, I need to talk to some people in authority, because if I'm just going to deal with some low-level grunt in an organization like this, I might easily get, screwed over, or I might be screwing myself, because then suppose some people come around and they're like, hey, I understand you've been, poaching some of our guys, getting them, involved in side work, and you're not kicking the proper tribute to the top here.
Yep.
I would probably go to the bosses, or at least the local bosses, and find out like what's my protocol here. Get some authority first.
Here's the question I have about that though, which is like, is it safe to say that sometimes spirits can be a little bit militaristic? That like we could say that they follow like a hierarchy or a chain of command the way the military does, or is it really just every man or every spirit for themselves?
Honestly, now we all have our own sort of cosmology on this. To me, it almost seems as if there are only 4 spirits, and that each one you talk to is a smaller part of the bigger one. Mm-hmm. But it's, in like a hologram, if you cut a piece of the hologram off, it's just got a smaller version of the whole thing. So my working theory on it is that these are all, the idea of them being individuals is just a convenience that we have because we're used to dealing with individuals, but it's not necessarily that they are individuals or that there's even 4 of them. They could be 4 aspects of one. Mm-hmm. So that I wouldn't necessarily look at it like one is answering to another one. It's like, well, the finger is part of the hand is part of the arm.
Well, that's a good way of looking at it. Yeah.
So if you need to do something with your fingers, you have to move the arm first.
All right. So now that we got that down, the next thing I wanted to ask you is something actually important, and I've heard certain conflicting suggestions about this, and that's the sigil. You mind explaining to the public like what is the sigil? Because I know what it is, but do you mind explaining to the public what is the sigil of the demon and why is it important and how do we use it?
Well, the in the way that the spirits themselves describe it, the sigil it's like their signature. Mm-hmm. So like if they because I've witnessed them like drawing spirits, like say if you have one that you don't have a sigil for, they will, and they actually describe this in one of the other books. I think the Magus with Barrett wrote that out. The way he said that if you have a spirit you don't have a sigil for, he will write it in your book in letters of flame that you then trace over with ink. Mm-hmm. So it seems to be their signature. That it's almost like a circuit path that creates the function of the thing that they do. It's literally a circuit pattern of them.
Right.
Like if you were to engrave it on a computer chip and run power through it, this would be the program that they that was contained on that chip. So that would be that's my impression of what the sigils are.
Well, this brings me then to my next question. I heard from more than one particular source, though, that when creating the sigil, of course, we all know that each spirit has its own corresponding rank to it. Like it has it's a king, it's a president, it's a prelate. And one person that I have read with basically said that if you really want the spirits to take you seriously, it's best to engrave the sigil onto the corresponding metal. Like example, if it's a king, it would be best to engrave the sigil of the king onto gold, because that's just going to make the sigil so much more powerful. Now, is this something that you think is a hard rule, or is this kind of like something that you could bypass it? And if you can bypass it, how does it necessarily change the outcome of the working when you're going to engrave the sigil on something other than its corresponding metal?
Well, this goes back into my my spell points model. That everything you do towards a ritual, say if you do the 3 days, 3 days of fasting, the day of no sleep, the 3 months of no touchy, you're not eating red meat, you're doing all of your prayers, you have the temple draped in the proper colors, you have a specific number of candles of a particular color. Everything you do towards that ritual puts more power into it, because by the time you walk into the temple to start, your entire brain hole is filled with this ritual, with every aspect of it. Everywhere you look, something is redirecting your consciousness back to this ritual. So, and everything, and especially the more effort you put into your tools, will give them more power. I don't know if gold itself has a particular physical property that makes it more powerful for demons, but I think that it's definitely in the mind of the magician, that by the time you've spent the energy and the time and the money to get this, it becomes more important to you. I mean, my first lamed that I had, cardboard.
Yeah, even Ron gets like an advocate of that. Like his belief system has always been like, if you can't do it with a paper ring, then you couldn't do it with a golden ring, right?
Exactly. So, and even the symbols on, you can see it's all faded and everything now. But I try to do it in the right colors with the right things. I used to have a cheat sheet on the back with the conjuration on it, so you can be like, oh no, just in case. But this was literally junk. I pulled a box out of the trash and did the sigil on it. And then I found this in a box of all my magical doodads. And I just hung on to it out of nostalgia. So it will work. I didn't even have that the first time I did them. So everything you do will make it more powerful. Just kind of like you could say, well, okay, we're going to climb Mount Everest. I need the proper boots. I need this type of winter coat. I need specific ropes. I need these the little Kleiny spikes. The name is escaping me at the moment because I've been up all night. We need oxygen. We got to have the special goggles, and it's got to be this brand. So you can do everything, or you can say, you know what? I'm going to climb the top in Speedos and sneakers. And you can do that.
Technically.
It cuts down on your chances of success. And if you do succeed, You're probably not going to want to be up there for terribly long, but you can
It's not
still
just
do it.
being up there; it's getting down too without freezing yourself.
It's getting down too. But the thing is that the actual climbing itself is not dependent on any of that stuff.
You could do it. It's just not recommended because
It's not recommended.
Get me
but even if you had all that gear, if you went and you bought all that gear and you sat down on the couch and you put on a video of someone else climbing Everest, you know what? You still didn't do it, even though you had all the gear.
So that actually says to go that sometimes the people with the best tools don't get the best results because, like, nowadays I'm really thankful, bro, for people like Goetic Impressions who make getting ritual tools so much easier. They do such a wonderful job. Like, wow. And which is going to bring me to my next point. I hear conflicting remarks about you should be the one to make the sigil yourself because it's your energy. Like, you must be the one that, like, at the hour of the sun, on the day of the sun, at sunrise, strike it at that moment and be the one to imbue it. I've also heard that, you can have some other person who's more proficient than you can do it. Just consecrate it at the corresponding hour. So what is your belief? Do you need to be the one to make these tools yourself? Or can you get a blank of this and use the ritual consecrations yourself to install that energy into it?
Honestly, I would do the consecration at the proper time, and I would let an expert go and craft that. Like, say if I was going to have the ring made in gold, and I would go and have someone who I would bring the design to someone who made rings and have it done like that. Now, to go back to Barrett's Magus, I know a lot of it was cribbed from the 3 books of occult philosophy, but there was parts of it that he had written himself. He said to do your wand is supposed to have metal caps on the end that are magnetized. And he said that what you do is you take pieces of wood that are the same size as your wand, and you take them to a blacksmith and you have him make caps for those sticks. And then you magnetize the caps and you put them on your wand yourself. So it was well known back then, it was widely known that it was perfectly fine to go and have an expert craftsman make your tools for you, or at least some parts of them.
Well, that would make more sense because you're literally speaking, like, you're being more efficient by doing that. Like, if you're not an armorer, if you're not a blacksmith, why are you going to create your own sword? You know what I mean? It just makes it almost impossible.
How are you going to create your own sword?
If you don't know how, just hammering things on the paper. I mean, on the metal, you won't have a sword. You'll just have a bent up piece of metal, which is gonna.
If someone says, "Well, I'm going to create a ring," you're great. I'm going to take this glob of gold. I'm going to melt it into a thing, and I'm going to scratch the letters on it. I'm going to bend it into a kind of a spiral and keep that on my finger. When you can have someone who actually does it so much better.
Exactly. So that is going to get to my next point, because I don't know if we're going to be able to cover all of how to go do a Goetic summoning. We might have to do an episode 2.
There's a lot.
Yeah, there's a lot. So the next thing I want to ask is we're going to pretty much wrap up the episode with this one. From your point of view, what are the bare minimum spell point expenditures to do a Goetic summoning that you would say, if my daughter were doing a summoning, I would recommend this? So this includes the fasting, the prayer, the no sexy time, all that stuff. Because like some people, nowadays what they do, they get a book that they can get on Amazon Prime or Kindle for $1 off of somebody who's never shown their face. And then they see a sigil of the spirit, and then they say, yeah, la, 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 to it. Then poof, spirit appears. I personally think that that's nonsense. That's just their own imagination at times. Others will go full-blown Stephen Skinner approach and go the whole 30 days and 30 nights of just ritualistic preparation. So I wanted to ask, Wade, what is just enough to start with a Goetic evocation? What would you recommend?
Honestly,
yeah,
you don't need anything. You can sit and be meditating, go into a scrying trance yourself with 0 protections, and call one of these guys. But now your safety at that point is in your own hands.
Yeah.
But like I was talking about, Climbing Everest in a Speedo and sneakers, you can do it. Your safety is going to be an issue, but this is the bare bones of what you would need.
Okay, before you get to say that, if your daughter was going to climb Everest in her two-piece and slippers, you tell her you can, but I'm not letting you. You know what I mean? So let's do
yeah,
it.
Well,
so let's
I would go along.
Okay, so
I would be there with her while she was doing it.
Okay, so with that being said, if let's get away with the could, and let's go for the should. What should you do from the Wade Long approach? Because guys, I'm just letting you guys all know.
As far as the bare bones of doing it safely,
let me get there. I wanted to share to the audience. In the darkest time in my life, when I did the evocation of the big man Delisle, the patron of this show, Wade was heaven sent, and his experience compared to mine when it comes to evocation has always been superior. He's like Obi-Wan Kenobi level, and we've had this conversation as friends. I just want to kind of share this conversation with all the people listening because you might get something very useful from it. So Wade, what's the should? What's the recommended?
What's the should? You threw me for a second when you said heaven sent, and I was like, heaven? Are you sure? But I would say bare minimum for recommendation. The triangle is really just a focus for it. I had one of the spirits explain it to me at one point, and that was a whole trippy thing because there's this complete dimensional physics thing that he was going off on, which was perfectly baffling, but they understood it. But I would recommend having the circle, not so much for protection, but because it sets you apart. What you're doing when you cast a magic circle is it's almost like an elevator. Mm-hmm. You put the circle down and everything in that circle kind of goes up. Mm-hmm. If that makes any sense.
Yeah.
It goes, it kind of, you're setting yourself apart from the regular world, and it makes it easier to see them. But at the same time, you're not all the way into their world, so it's less, you're less susceptible to any dangers, any hazards. You're kind of halfway between worlds in the circle. So definitely a circle is a good thing to have, even if it just is a visible boundary that you've drawn. Mm-hmm. And whatever you use for casting circles, if it's going to be the LBRP, if you have a Wiccan circle, or even just chanting and sprinkling salt in a circle, something that sets you apart.
What's again? Let's not do it the could. Let's do it the should. What's your suggested purification? I mean, because I remember, funny enough, one of our guests from Magic.tv, he was like, David Stolowitz, God bless him, I love him dearly. He's also into evocation and stuff. And I was talking to him about the Belial working around the same time I was talking to you. And I was like, Dave, well, how strict is the not get laid rule? And he was like, God damn it, Robert, you're about to summon a viceroy of hell. The least you can do is not get jiggy with it for a week. You know what I mean? So I was like, okay. And then he was very adamant to me. He said, no matter what you do not offer any blood. Do not. You do not want to give him that kind of power over you. I never understood why, but I took his word for it. So this is what I wanted to ask you. The purification work is number one. What would you recommend? Number two, why was he adamant not to offer it blood?
Well, what I've noticed with the I actually have a theory on the whole, why no touchy stuff. But it seems to be that human hormones play a huge part in magical ability. Mm-hmm. In that conjuration actions like conjuration, commanding spirits, carving sigils, casting spells. These are forceful actions, and they seem to be enhanced by testosterone.
Yeah.
Whereas intuition and scrying and divination, all of these seem to be receptive actions, and those are enhanced by estrogen. So I would think that having no, happy bits fun time for a couple of days would balance your hormones on your own side. So it might actually be, what's that?
Isn't this kind of like that old wives' tale that like a man shouldn't have sex before his boxing match?
Yeah, well, that kind of goes into it, because if you go too long without it, your testosterone starts to drop.
Mm-hmm.
So there should be like anywhere from 3 days to a week, depending on your own hormone levels, should be at peak. In other words, basically you would work best if you are literally horny.
Yeah, that works. That actually works. So
it's kind of like you don't want to go shopping at the store when you're hungry.
Yeah, that makes perfect sense.
Because you are after everything at that point.
Because if you're hungry, you're gonna freaking order every single bit of junk you can get your hands on.
Okay, exactly.
So is it a Robin Wade exclusive that we are in agreement that a week of sexual purity is recommended?
3 days to a week.
3 days to a week. And when we say sexual purity, we're talking about no getting jiggy with it and no self-stimulation, correct?
Yeah.
All right. Now, the fasting, the food. Now, I remember Stephen Skinner said something about a strict fast and not a Muslim fast, like 7 days of no food. Now, dude, I go 2 days without food, and I'm going to lose my shit. So it's like...
Honestly, I would say, in my own experience, going without sleep is more useful than going without food. Because you go without food, you start losing like vital nutrients, but it's also your body becomes sharpened. To the point that you're using up your body's reserves of calories. So your function changes. You're going off of the backup tank instead of the primary fuel tank. But when you stop sleeping, I've noticed that after 3 days you start to hallucinate.
Yeah, that's a pretty. So, are you saying that like if you're going to do a summoning, you got to go 3 days without sleep? I don't even think I could do that.
I've gone 8 days without sleep. Human body can do it. It's incredible what you can do.
Yeah, again, there's that could versus should, man. I don't want no psychological damage done to me, man.
No. It's just when you don't dream. When you don't sleep, you don't dream. When you don't dream, your brain starts like seizing onto every stray stimulus it can.
Is that
so? It would make the spirits much more visible.
But the question is, your sleeplessness, is that like you're willing yourself not to have any sleep without any kind of stimulants like coffee?
No, you could have coffee.
Okay,
I mean, depending on what your fast is like.
No, all right. Because I'm about to say, if you're going to go 3 days without sleep without coffee, I'm going to go run a marathon tomorrow. It's like,
yeah.
All right. So now we know that we're going at least a week without sexy time and 3 days without food. Is that what we're looking at?
Again, this is going to come back to your own particular hormone levels, because if you go too long without sex, your levels drop.
Yeah, so you have to find that sweet spot. So it's very tennis.
So you want to find a sweet spot in there to where it's like where your body is still hoping for some sexy time, but hasn't given up on it.
All right. Now I'm gonna have to ask this next thing too. I've also heard from certain sources that on the last 24 hours, no water. I haven't
heard that one, because I would think that would just, that seems to be the sort of thing that just stimulates hallucinations.
Because it's going to lead to a bit of a stand-up joke I had. It's like, back in the day, and I've heard in the last day, the very last day, no sleep, just like what you recommended, no sleep, right? So let's look at this, okay? So these motherfuckers haven't gotten laid in a week, haven't eaten in 3 days, haven't had water in 24 hours, and haven't slept in a day. No shit, you're seeing demons, angels, UFOs, because your mind is fried. You know what I mean?
Yeah. Well,
It's like,
also, if you look at it from the point of view that you are literally coercing yourself into success.
uh-huh.
You know, like when you're out with your buddies and you're drinking, you're just like, okay, I make this shot, everybody's going to get laid, and you have your shot lined up, and this gives you the incentive to succeed.
Yeah.
Even if it's only subconscious. So when you're in the temple, you're like, your brain is going, okay, dude, you are completely punishing your body here. Can you just do this? We will succeed, and then you can go back and get something to eat, get something to drink, go sleep. It gives you the incentive for success at that point. So there's a lot of factors into why these things happen. A lot of it is going to be because then you don't have any distractions. Mm-hmm. So like if you just came from your girlfriend's place, you're not going to be thinking about the ritual. Mm-hmm. You're going to be thinking about all of the happy fun times you just had. So your focus is off. So these things are going to create focus, but they also create incentives for success.
This is what I wanted to ask you next, though. When you're doing the ritual, especially when it comes to we'll talk about this next episode, the actual mechanical side of the ritual. Are you coming from an area of will where you are willing and using your willpower, and I'm calling through it is through my fasting and my lack of sleep and my no having water and food that I have the power to call up this spirit? Or are you coming from a level of reverence where you, because of that level of, let's just say, abstinence, in for lack of a better word, you are in effect aligning yourself with a higher divine principle, hence you are like now more of an instrument of the divine? So the question is it you, or are you plugging into something more?
You mean, is purity itself a magical element?
Yeah, in other words, is the purity yours, or is the purity something that connects you to something bigger?
Honestly, if you yourself value purity, like say if you're a devout Christian or Muslim, or if you're a devout Jew or any of these things, if you value purity in and of itself, this will definitely connect you to the divine. I myself look at it more of a removal of distractions, because quite honestly, you can summon demons while you're having sex. Mm-hmm. It's not about defiling yourself or becoming impure. It's about focus. It's about having your entire will, laser focused on what it is that you're doing. Mm.
So it's
so for me. Oh, go ahead.
Let's say will plays a very big part in it, right?
Well, yeah. I mean, you can be the purest guy in the world and not summon a demon. Mm-hmm. It's just like you can be the guy with all the climbing gear and the boots and the sunglasses sitting on the couch and not climbing Mount Everest.
Or you
can have all of the preparation down and be absolutely pristine, but you still got to do it.
Or like you said, you can be that guy in his underwear who climbs up the mountain, but probably freezes himself off on the way back.
Very much, yes.
Fascinating. It's a very interesting way. So, like, basically for this episode, Wade and I just did a bit of a deep dive to the preparatory stage of the Goetic evocation. The next thing we're going to do, the next episode, Wade and I will discuss the mechanical phase, like what tools we should have, how we consecrate them, very important. What the steps will be. Maybe we can even prepare like a cheat sheet of what people can do and like add it to the lore of things that we're going to be doing, so that people can actually get notes from this in hopes of doing their own evocation. Now, my own point of view is this. If you are still wet behind the ears, I mean, although I rarely disagree with Wade, but this is one area I will. Uh, don't try to get the attention of something that could eat you. You know what I mean? It's like, you know, because like if you're gonna jump straight to like Belial, who was next to fall after Lucifer, the best you can hope for is he ignores you. But if you got nothing to offer him, like I'm also trying to understand, whenever you do dealings with any of these kind of spirits, you got to have something to offer them. So like for Belial, who values power and prestige and politics and leadership, first thing you got to answer in yourself is, do you possess that in yourself? You know what I mean? Do you have these traits? Can he see you as a valuable asset to his agenda? Because if you don't value those things, then he's going to be like, why the fuck am I going to work with you? But if you're like, example, top of the class graduate from West Point and already getting internship with the Pentagon at 25, hell yes, somebody like Belial is going to be interested in you. You get what I'm saying? So try to find that inner resonance. So like, if you're the kind of person, if you want to do love workings with any of let's say the Venus spirits, do you have something worth loving? And do you even have that self-love? Because that's going to be your ace. That's what you're going to sell. They cannot multiply times zero. You know what I mean? They cannot increase something that's like, if you're telling a spirit like Dantalion, meet me, give me a girlfriend, but you have zero self-love and self-respect, then he can't multiply times zero. It's just like, there's nothing there for me to work with. Versus if you're like, all right, I may be overweight, I may be ugly, but I'm the smartest motherfucker on the block, and I cook a mean steak. That's self-love. And for all you know, the girl you're going to meet is going to fall in love with you because of the steak you make. So if you're going to deal with any of these spirits, especially with the Goetics, make sure you got something to offer them. They'll be more willing to cooperate with you than if you're just going to be like, hey, you do give power? I can't even spell it right. It's like,
well, it also gives you a common resonance. You know, if you are yourself a lover who doesn't have someone with them, but this is a big part of your personality, then yeah, you know, you're gonna have a lot of common ground with these spirits. It's going to work out better for you.
Exactly. And you know, I mean, it's funny because our dear friend Lon Duquette made a video, and he wrote it in his book, My Life with the Spirits. Never share a fiend with a friend. And it was about his personal workings with Belial and how it worked and it didn't work and it turned south. I don't mean to disrespect Lon. Lon is like everybody's father. But one of these days, I'm going to write a small periodical called Always Share a Fiend with a Friend. And I'm going to share about all the beautiful things that happened between me and you because of working with Belial. You see what I mean? Like all the things happening now, from Magic TV, Tarot Con, all the friends we've made was because of that. You know what I mean? Because we did that working. You may have not been with me, but you did that work. You helped me with it. You were an integral part of it. And it shows.
Here's the title of your book.
What?
Fiends with Benefits.
Fiends with Benefits. It's not going to be a book. It's going to be an article. I cannot give a whole book on that.
Fair enough.
But at the end of the day, you know, but yeah, I like the whole Fiends with Benefits title. But then, yeah, because like I know Lon made that. If you guys have a copy of My Life with the Spirits, read it. Because all the mages I've asked who've worked with Belial have had nothing but good things to say. But it's like working with the mafia. If I go to the Dawn and I say, hey, you got some nice coats on a really cheap price, the Dawn might say, yeah, I got some for you. I'll take care of you. And the next thing you know, you got a coat. But now you're also indebted to the mafia.
You got a coat and you got a job.
Exactly. And now you're pretty much like, you're kind of like indebted, not indebted eternally.
You're involved.
You're involved. And
because that's the thing, is that when you're working with them, there's always a give and take. You're like, okay, well, I've got this business. And they're like, oh, we're going to bring you a whole lot more business. These guys are going to be coming in. They're going to be paying out a ton in cash. And they're going to be buying these items that you have for sale, but we're going to bring you the items. They're going to come in, pay us in cash. You're going to pay us for the items. You're going to write this off. And you're like, oh, now I'm money laundering. I get it.
Yeah,
but
you're involved.
There you are. You're involved. You're getting what you want. They're getting what they want.
I remember when I used to work in the States one summer, there was this old timer, and he told me about it because he used to be from the East Coast, and he told me about his experiences with the mafia. And he said, at the end of the day, the mafia is all about money. If you get in the way of money, that's when they kill you. But if you bring money to them, they'll go out of their way to protect you. So it's the same thing. If you are a genuine asset to these spirits, especially with the Goetics that I've worked with, I had one bad experience with one. I'll share with that one these days. But if you're an asset to them, you will really feel that they will go out of their way. Like, believe it or not, this is a weird thing to say. This was actually shared in my upcoming book, The Anubion. I'm probably alive right now because of Belial. If he didn't come in when he did, if I didn't do that working when I did, I probably would not have been around right now. It was that bad. The things that came from that relationship, that very respectful working relationship, opened a lot of doors. And it's funny because like Shea Belay was telling me that like if he comes to Manila, he'd love to do an evocation. That's why I've been wanting to get your ass here because I got the perfect place for it, man.
Well, from what I've seen, my experience of them, what they want most from you is reality.
Mm-hmm.
They want to be real. Even the ones that you don't work with, that's what you can give them, is you can give, because if you know, a lot of these guys have not been, you know, spoken with in centuries.
Mm-hmm.
You know, some of them used to be gods.
True.
But if you look, because I asked one, I said, well, what exactly do you want? And he said straight up, make us real. You know, if you take a book, write a conjuration specifically to me on one side, have my picture and sigil on the other. You know, that now I have my own page in this. If you want to do, like, take some clay and make a statue or something like that, they want to be considered real because it actually does make them real. The more presence they have in this world, the easier it's going to be to work with them.
Not only that, though, too, bro, you have to consider. What was I going to say? It's not unlike American Gods. Am I correct?
Yes.
I mean, like, you know, like what Odin said. You know, you want to be blessed, be good to your God. Simple as that. And ultimately speaking, if you're going to do stuff to bring and further the name of your God or whatever spirit you're working with, you know, they'll really go out of their way. They will really make it a point to take care of you. But that's actually a discussion for another time. So anyhow,
what's actually more accurate than American Gods?
What?
It's going to sound silly, but that movie Coco.
I haven't really gotten around to watching that.
Oh, well, okay. So that in there, it's ancestors, but they have their whole thing is they can come and visit you during the Dia de los Muertos if you have their picture up on your family altar and you leave out the offerings and the food and all this other stuff, and their picture is up. They can come see you because you've made them real. That's sort of like your bitch. But when the last person alive has forgotten you, you die forever. You're like it's like the second death. That's how dead people die, is once they're forgotten.
Yep.
So the gods kind of operate on the same thing. The spirits, everything operates the same way.
Well, that being said, we have learned quite a bit today from my friend, dear friend Wade, and I am actually very much looking forward to the next part in this series because this is kind of like a beginning to the whole practice of the Goetia. You know, because of course we don't want to just give you the ritual script half cocked, and in the end, you know, somebody just ends up burnt alive because they did the thing wrong. So pick apart our episode as to what you've learned about what to expect for the preparatory phase of a Goetic summoning. And in the next part of this series, we'll talk about the actual going about the doing it. So anyhow, it's been an interesting episode with you, Wade. Don't leave anywhere yet. I'm just going to talk to you after the episode. Signing off. See you all next episode because we have a special guest. Next Magic TV once again, David Rankin talking about Liber Spiritum. Okay, his next book, Liber Intelligentiarum, was just jaw-dropping, man. I mean, like, fuck. And now he's making a Spiritum, and I listened to it today on Glitch Bottle. It was a long episode. Wow, I cannot wait. I just cannot wait.